Have you ever spent a long time on your watercolour painting only for this to happen? It's so frustrating when you feel that you've ruined something that you've given a lot of time to and that's looking really good. But it really isn't the end of the world. In this video, I'm going to share with you what I consider to be the top watercolour mistakes and how you can remedy them to carry on with your painting. But make sure that you stay until the end, where I will give you my bonus tip on an error that really can't be resolved but can be avoided from the very beginning. So let's get started. But before we dive in, if you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any future tips, tricks or hacks. Let's get started with tip number 1. And how we can rescue this painting from having the paintbrush dropped on it. So all we need is a glass of clean water, some paper towel. This is called a magic eraser, and it's essentially a synthetic sponge that we just dip in the water and squeeze it out and just pat it. You can see I'm almost using a scrubbing motion here. Just pat it onto the paper and just wiggle it around a little bit. Now, what I will say, the downside, the caveat to this is that you can't paint over the paper that you've really agitated because it will become damaged. If you find that your paint droplets are within your painting itself, or even on the outside edge of it here, what you can do, if you are moving the paint away from the outside edge, you can go over it a little bit. I ought to mention, this is something that you can do if the error happened a long time ago. It isn't something that you need to mop up straight away. You can just get it done. And you can see there are still a few little splats here, but you could disguise them with something else if you want to, or you can just continue to rub them out. I'm going to leave that like that. I actually think it looks quite nice and adds something to my painting. So tip number 1, pat it dry, and that's rescued your painting. Overworking your painting, where you start to put so many layers on the paint and you scrub and scrub and scrub, it really begins to gnarl away at the paper. You can see here, even if you're using good quality watercolour paper, your watercolour paper becomes very, very bitty and broken up. By overworking your painting and putting on too many layers and scrubbing that paper, you will get this effect, which really isn't good. Where you can see these grains here, this is the watercolour paper, the cotton in the watercolour paper, if you're using that type of, becoming broken down, and you won't be able to paint over that. So the key here, how to avoid this, is by really getting to know your colours. Make yourself a really good colour chart like this, and you can see how your colours would match up beforehand to save you from scrubbing away and putting too many layers on your paper. You've managed to go outside the pencil line, and this is a very easily solved problem. I'm using a flat synthetic brush, and this is something I use throughout my tutorials. Also very good for removing any errors like this. All you do is use a damp brush, pat it dry with your kitchen towel, and repeat the process until you remove the paint. And pat it dry, and you've removed the error. Next up, we have my favourite tip, hard edges. If you have been watching my watercolour tutorial videos, you will see that I do this all the time, and it's one of my favourite things to do to add some blur to any of my paintings. So to remedy this, what we do is we take a brush with just plain water on and take it over the entire thing, merging the colours together. This is a really good way of softening through any of your hard edges, particularly so here. Just use the brush and it merges those colours together. Lovely and blurred. My bonus tip, very, very simple, and one that simply cannot be solved, so you have to adhere to this rule from the beginning. Rule number 1, rookie error that I have made repeatedly: wash your hands. Seriously, we have natural oils on our hands. If you don't wash your hands with soap and water before you begin to paint, it can leave a residue of oil on your painting, making it impossible to resolve. There's no amount of scrubbing or lifting out that will rescue this particular problem, and it really has to be taken on board from the very beginning. You must wash your hands. Get rid of all that oil, that natural oil that you have on your skin, before you apply your hands to the paper. I know that some people like to put a sheet of watercolour paper or some sort of barrier between themselves and your watercolour painting, but for me it can be a little bit restrictive and very difficult to move your hand. So my bonus tip is wash your hands. Thank you for watching, everybody. Stay tuned, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and until next time.